Transmission 100218.
Welcome to Porcelain Peak, a strange and scary podcast covering all things horror and science fiction. Here are your hosts, Anthony, John, and Anthony.
Thanks again, as always, Constance. Welcome, Porcelain Peeps. This is episode 27 of season 2. How are my boys doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
Louder, they can't hear you in the back.
I'm doing good. Excited to talk about this. We haven't done a true crime episode in a while.
Yeah, a little minute.
And I love, well, I won't say, but I love this particular type of true crime. I don't want to give anything away.
The kind that's super true.
And also crime.
Yeah. I am doing quite well. I have recently joined what I feel like is my true calling in life, besides the podcast and the youtube.com/HereBeMonsters. I've actually recently joined a group on Facebook called A Group Where We Pretend to Be Ants in an Ant Colony. And the basic premise is it's a private group. You answer some questions to get in, and then you become an ant. And so what I've been doing for about the past week is following this page as it floods my Facebook with, it'll be like a picture of ants eating something, like a bunch of sugar or something, and it'll be like, ants, help me. And then 9,000 comments that just say bite in all caps, or eat, or chomp. And that's the whole page. Just people just put, and the rules are basically don't talk about COVID-19. The queen is our ruler, like all hail the queen. So that is kind of a summary of where my mental state is currently.
I think that's a summary of where everyone's mental state is.
Yeah. So if you're interested, again, the group is called A Group Where We Pretend to Be Ants in an Ant Colony.
How are you, John?
I'm doing pretty well. This has been the first week where I've kind of been taking on a little more responsibilities through my day job. And it's been a better experience having an actual schedule, being able to flex some muscles that I wasn't necessarily flexing before. It may not be super role specific to my actual job, but it is something that kind of keeps things sharp, keeps things fresh, and allows me to not sit around in my fudgies all day, which is definitely appreciated on all fronts.
And with more work to do at your day job, you can finally stop your night job of being a lady of the night,
Yeah.
and you can support the family.
Yeah, no
with
more.
some reputable.
My legs are out now, but no more out legs out on the corner trying to pick up me's out there.
That's all I got.
But yeah, so we are going to be, as alluded to, talking about a very specific series of true crime cases. It should be a very interesting discussion. There is some cinema ties to it as well, so I mean, obviously we're going to dig into those as well. But first, let's go ahead and hit some news.
This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. Fuck the prime time, bitch.
Tight.
So a couple things that came into my radar are that there are currently a few remakes in development. I think we've mentioned Hellraiser before. There's also one for Night of the Hunter that they're talking about remaking. And then this one was actually pretty surprising to me, but they are talking about remaking The Others. And I don't know how well that one would hit because a lot of people know the twist to that movie. So would you want to go see it redone knowing what you're getting into? I probably would be very hesitant. I guess maybe bringing it to new audiences. But those are some of the remakes that are currently in development. The other thing I wanted to mention to you guys is that Shudder is doing a halfway to Halloween
I saw this,
thing for this month. And one of the gimmicks that they're doing is a hotline, halfway to Halloween hotline. You can call that number on Fridays from 3 to 4, and their curator will give you a live recommendation.
That's tight.
Yeah, so if you want to give that a call, the number is 914-481-2239.
You gave them my number. Why are you doing this? I don't have enough recommendations for
He's
everyone.
trying to get out of that line of work, Anthony.
He's all, Midsummer, Midsummer, Midsummer.
Annihilation?
Yeah. I hope that the curator that you get on the phone is the curator from that core show. Remember when he'd go into like the room with all the white VHSs?
I think it is that guy.
Yeah, that guy is really funny. Like, he was my favorite part of the show whenever he would go and ask for like new videotapes, and the guy would just say like the creepiest shit. That's super exciting. I love Shudder. I've said this in previous weeks, but it's been like what's been getting me through all of my time stuck at home has been all the cool stuff on Shudder. So I'm super excited. I'm going to try that out.
Yeah, I tried calling it because I didn't read that it was only on Fridays.
Great.
It was like, check back in Friday, dummy.
Great instruction following for sure.
Yeah.
Something that I thought was exciting, but also potentially terribly catastrophic, depending on how you feel about J.J. Abrams, is that he's going to be, his production company, Bad Robot, is going to be partnering up with HBO Max, correct? Mm-hmm. To produce an Overlook Hotel series. So a series based around the terrifying and unsettling untold stories of the Overlook Hotel, which is something that I'm not terribly surprised to hear, but I don't really know how I feel about J.J. Abrams anymore, so it's really hard for me to come at this with like a strong opinion, because I don't know whether I am excited because of the stuff of his that he's made that I like, or I'm scared because of the stuff he's made that's like a complete bastardization of things that we love. So
yeah, definitely. There are more things that he is doing specifically for HBO Max. He's signing a 3-show deal for 3 different properties. The other big one, because there's one that there's the Shining one, and then there's just one that doesn't have like a name or anything yet, but then he's doing one based around the Justice League Dark characters as well, which is weird considering WB has their own DC-based platform. But I know that they are in pretty well with HBO, so I definitely could see that being something that would be a potential success. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was that they are officially, speaking of WB, are officially going to be bringing Scoob, the prequel origin story to how Shaggy met Scooby, and then probably some other adventure type things as well, is going to be coming straight to streaming platforms. I think it goes VOD first, then streaming wherever they're going to put it.
Did that ever hit theaters, or it never?
It did not hit theaters. It was, the intention was, I believe, either next month or sometime in the summer was when it was supposed to be coming out, but it will no longer be going to theaters. It's going to come straight to your home TV.
yeah, I read a little bit about this, and it looks like what is going to end up happening is that it's going to be similar to what they did for the Universal movies. It's going to be $20 for a rental, I think, and then maybe $25 or just a little bit more to actually like own it digitally. Mm-hmm. So there will be that opportunity, unlike with Invisible Man and The Hunt, where you could just rent, you couldn't buy at the time. Right. I'm kind of excited about this because this Scoob movie, I guess, is going to be the launch of like a Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe, because all hail Marvel, Stan Lee be unto you. It's got other characters from like Hanna-Barbera cartoons in the movie. Oh, shit. So it's supposed to be like a launch of a bigger cinematic universe for them. So, I mean, this to me is honestly, like we were talking about with Artemis Fowl, a really, really good movie to do this with, I think, because people have a million other Scooby-Doo properties they're probably burnt out on. And this thing, what kind of audience was it really going to draw besides kids? So just put it straight in homes where kids who are stuck at home can watch it. Yeah. And I mean, that's like Trolls, the new Trolls movie did that exact same thing. And I don't know how
had pretty solid success from what I've heard.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah.
A lot of parents out there looking for things to have their kids do, and this is like the perfect opportunity to just grab some quick cash. More than you probably would actually get from a theater, because you're cutting out the middleman for delivery process, and you're also cutting out the need to like backload things with snacks for the theater to be able to make their cut back. If they're renting it for $20, that's likely more than the movie company would have gotten in the first place for a family of 4 to go see the movie. So I think that it's a slam dunk to do it that way, and then just after a little while, roll it out onto HBO or to whatever platform you're looking to do it on. Speaking of WB, they are a big-time player in the news recently. They are also talking about basically reconsidering their entire theatrical release model for the foreseeable future. So depending on how all of this goes, when theaters actually do start opening on a more global scale, if they're going to be looking at something where, like we talked about in our beginning of the year, like beginning of the decade discussion that we had a few months ago, basically looking at giving the opportunity to go see it in the theater or just to watch it at home, because people have different needs, especially in a middle of or post COVID situation. There are going to be a lot of people who are going to be like, I still don't feel comfortable going out of my house. So I think that it's a smart call. I just know that they're going to be big time movies. Like Tenet is a Warner Brothers movie. I mean, you're not going to get Christopher Nolan to say like, "Hey, we're not going to play this in IMAX."
Yeah.
I mean, that's how he makes his films. He makes them to be seen on the biggest screen possible, and that's a movie that I was excited to see in theaters. I think while I'm stoked for it, I would be less excited to see it at home.
Well, and that segues really nicely into what I was just about to talk about, which is that I saw Regal post the other day stills from Tenet, and they were saying like, "Oh, what upcoming like Regal released film is this from?" Which obviously is an indication from Regal that they have intentions to open up before Tenet comes out, which is in July. And that's exactly what I was going to say, is that for the most part, there haven't really been any movies so far where I've been like, damn, like I'm really bummed I won't be able to see that in theaters. But when it starts getting around to movies like Tenet, Christopher Nolan movies, I feel like, and he feels the same way, need to be seen on the big screen, IMAX if possible.
Well,
and
he makes it so that it's worth going to the theater.
yeah, he's one of those people that still believes in going to the movie theater specifically to see these projects. And I think that if theaters are still closed in July, that's another one that's going to need to be pushed back, because just going straight to streaming, I don't think isn't going to work for something like that.
Aside from Quentin Tarantino, he is our generation's big blockbuster auteur. So I think that I really love going to the theater. It's something that I cherish from my childhood. It's something that even with all of the terrible things that happen in theaters nowadays, dirty theaters, overpriced tickets, shitty people, I think that it's still something that I hold on to, and it's still something that I know that the other people in this room feel very strongly about as well. And I'm excited to have it back. I just don't know if we're going to get it back. It's lost in thought. I don't know where the films go if they don't go. All right, so that is going to wrap it up for news this week. Sorry to end it on a little bit of a somber tone. Hopefully, we'll hit you with a little bit of trivia to make it better.
Here's how we play. I ask a question. If you get it right, Steve lives.
Please don't do this.
Come on, it'll be fun.
Please.
It's an easy category.
Please.
Movie trivia. Or even give you a warm-up question.
Don't do this, I can't.
Name the killer in Halloween.
I will be reading to John Brasher. John's going to read to Anthony Silva. Anthony Silva will read back to me. And our first category is monster.
I think at this point you should be referring to me as Your Highness or Sir or...
I got 3 in a row.
Okay.
So...
Hey, none of y'all have swept a card before, except for me.
Prove it.
I have the audio data to back it up.
What was the name of the actor that played the vampire at the center of Nosferatu in 1922?
And this is a card that will certainly not be swept. I'm going to say it is Sir Charles Fuck.
It's Max Schreck.
You'd know that if you'd watched.
I haven't watched because I've been busy, but I will. I will watch
What?
his show.
Here Be Monsters on
Here Be
YouTube,
Monsters at YouTube.
where I go over the history of art and horror films.
Yeah.
Well, if you go search Here Be Monsters and then filter by channel and then scroll like within the first 10, I'm definitely there.
Oh my god. John, read the damn card.
What is the name of the fictional Iranian ghost town in which a girl walks home alone at night from 2014 is set?
I just watched this movie like 2 weeks ago. Is it Bad City?
It is indeed. Good kid, bad city.
I knew it was something weird like that. All right, cool. Anthony, what is the relationship between Ginger and Bridget in Ginger Snaps from 2000?
That's another one on the list.
They're sisters.
They're correct.
What's on what list?
I want to say that because have you both seen that movie?
Yeah.
I have not seen it.
I saw it when I was a youngin'.
I have not seen it.
So that is 0-1-1 as we move into gore and
Things are
disturbing.
finally correct.
In The Last House on the Left from 1972, what is the name Mari gives Junior when she gives him her peace symbol necklace?
There's no way it's Charles Fuck again.
Yeah,
that
it's
would be a
definitely-
crazy coincidence.
Yeah, I know.
What wasn't Charles fucking first place?
Yeah. I'm going to say hippie boy.
John, it was Willow.
Tight.
So close.
Yeah, so close. All right. Who directed Green Room from 2015 and Blue Ruin from 2013?
Red herring.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Tad Strange.
It is not Tad Strange. It is Jeremy Saulnier.
Oh, Jeremy Saulnier.
Does he make movies that don't have colors in the title?
I believe so. but obviously I wouldn't know. All right, Anthony. The murder of what family member does Sheriff Wydell avenge in The Devil's Rejects from 2005?
The Devil's Rejects.
Is it his brother?
It is his brother. Good job.
2 sibling cards or questions back to back, huh?
Yeah, what's with these cards and having like themes?
That's how they do it in Trivial Pursuit, John. All right, so that is
Zip.
0, 1, 2. Darn, guys, what's happening? Psychological. Which character in Pet Sematary is not resurrected? Gage Creed,
Gabe.
Rachel Goldman Creed, Judd Crandall, or Bill Baderman?
I'm going to say Judd.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Nice guess, buddy.
I've seen this movie. It's just been a minute.
Yeah, dude, that was a fucking guess.
All right. To what M. Night Shyamalan film was Split, the 2016, a sequel to?
Unbreakable.
It's a miracle!
I was hoping somebody else would get what I was going for, yeah.
I want no part of it.
Because females are strong as hell.
I don't like that. I don't like that.
It's the sound people hear before their heads explode.
Yeah, I'll cut that out if it's really, really peaked, we'll say.
All right, Perez, in what persona does the titular character of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from 1939 remain upon his death?
Hide.
Ooh, he transforms. He is Dr. Jekyll when he dies.
Bitch.
All right, so it's 2-2-1.
Well, that sucks, but that's going to bring this round to 1-2-2 as we move into paranormal. John, what is the name of the clairvoyant character that helps the Freeling family in Poltergeist from 1982?
Fucking, what the fuck is this card? For real. I'm going to say...
Indian Burial Ground.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to say, hoping that maybe it's some kind of a nod, I'm going to say Dr. Warren.
It is Tangina Barrons. Tangina Barrons.
Cool. Yes.
Oh, Tangina.
Come on,
Fucking
man.
great.
You know Tangina.
Good old fucking Tangina. Jesus fucking Christ. All right. What is the name of the haunted Italian luxury liner in Ghost Ship from 2002?
The SS Boyardi.
Oh, so close. It was the SS Antonia Grazia.
Okay. All right, Perez, in what Italian city is John Baxter restoring an old church in Don't Look Now from 1973?
Florence.
It is Venice.
Damn it.
Weird that we got a couple Italy questions there, though.
Yeah. Italia.
Well, balls. So that still leaves us at 1-2-2, and we're going to go ahead and go into killer. All right, John. I think you'll get this one, but it's still a name. What actress played the character revealed to be the mastermind behind the Ghostface killer in Scream 4 from 2011? Spoilers.
Yeah. That's Emma Roberts, correct?
That is correct.
Cool. All right.
Unfabulous herself.
All right. In what film in the Step Up film series did Sharni Vinson, who plays protagonist Aaron in You're Next from 2013, star?
Step Up to the Streets.
It is Step Up 3D.
Ah, damn.
Down.
What a fucking bizarre way to word a question.
It's the one where the shark comes out of the screen, right?
Yeah, definitely. The very shitty shark not actually coming out, but like to the left a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Perez, what Christian ceremony is Karen attending on the day she is murdered in Alice, Sweet Alice from 1976?
A baptism.
Her first communion.
Oh, man. That's a three-way tie at 2 going into international.
Yeah,
That
John, but that's
fucking
what I say.
I know. I'm just reminding
what I
you.
say.
I'm just fucking reminding you that I came back, baby.
Knife fight.
You came back to 2.
Hey, with the card that I had, I'm pretty fucking proud of it. And if it's some weird, obscure international film name that I have to come up with, I'm going to laugh.
Okay, well, here we go. International in audition from 1999. After paralyzing Oyama, what method involving needles does Asami use to torture him?
Is it acupuncture?
You would think, but it is acupuncture.
Yeah. Keeping myself alive.
Dang. Is John going to win?
I probably not, but we'll figure this out. What 2010 Norwegian mockumentary was about certain mythical cave-dwelling giants?
Troll Hunter.
It is Troll Hunter.
Wow. You guys just got international questions right?
Yeah, and I think you might get your international question right for another fucking tie, but we'll see. Perez, the killer in The Bird with the Crystal Plumage from 1970, wears what color gloves?
I don't know. Red.
Ooh, they are the classic Giallo black gloves.
Well, that's a two-way tie.
That's a two-way tie.
Tiebreaker. Tiebreaker is the freshest breaker.
That's such a cool card. All right. Okay, so we're going to do a tiebreaker for these two assholes. And the first question comes from the monster category. In The Mummy from 1932, what actor played the titular character?
Boris Karloff.
Yeah.
Which you'll know when you tune into the newest episode of Here Be Monsters on YouTube, where we cover the 1930s Universal Horror Monsters.
Which by the time you listen to this, probably has been out for a while.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Like several weeks. Silva coming back with the three-peat.
Yes. What's a song that I can sing about being the best?
Like,
I'm the best.
yeah.
Around.
Careful, we're posting these things to YouTube now. We might get content claimed.
Don't come and sue us now.
There you go.
But I feel pretty good about my trivia performance over the course of the past couple of weeks. Like it's been...
You haven't been ripping ass, so that's
I've
good.
been like... I've been in there, making it to the tie games and, at least making some kind of an effort. I definitely do not fare well in a timed challenge, that's for sure.
Yeah. And I've just gotten lucky on the timed ones because they...
Or like things you've been studying
Things
on.
I've been literally studying right before I came over.
But yeah, that is going to wrap it up for trivia this week. If you have enjoyed these lovely shenanigans or some of that somber but still some uplifting things news, go ahead and subscribe to the channel so that way you never miss out on a thing. And we are going to jump into our main course for the evening.
I know this steak doesn't exist. I know that when I put it in my mouth, the Matrix is telling my brain that it is juicy and delicious. After 9 years, you know what I realize? Ignorance is bliss.
All right, so this week we're going to be talking about Texarkana, and there's some murders that took place under the moonlight, like most murders take place.
All right, well, so this bitch is about to OD on me, so I'm going to stab an adrenaline-filled needle into your heart and have you take that again.
It's not his week anyway. It's my week. So I'm talking about Texarkana. There's your after show content. All right, so we are going to be talking about the Texarkana Moonlight Murders, otherwise known as the Phantom Murders?
The Phantom Murders.
The Phantom
Killer
Murders.
Killer murders.
So this is a pretty interesting topic. I haven't had a lot of time to study on it because I've been a lot busier with work stuff, but I know that Silva is ready to take the lead on this one. You've got like a timeline and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so let me take you back to a little time called the 1940s.
Ooh, the 40s.
Picture this. Texas and Arkansas. Are they two separate states? Not in this town. Texarkana. It's the town where this thing happened. So in 1946, we had the start of what would end up being known as these Phantom Murders, with the February 22nd attack on Mary Ann Larry, who was 19, and Jimmy Hollis, who's 25. So the thing that I think I saw here when I was doing the research is that there are a lot of parallels to a killer like the Zodiac Killer, where where the killer goes after couples on like lovers' lanes and things like that, which is a very common kind of like serial killer MO. In this case, he did find the two at a lover's lane. Did not end up killing them, though. This was an attempted murder. The man, Jimmy, was beaten over the head. Mary Ann was told to run by the killer and was eventually tracked down and beaten and assaulted. But they did both survive, and they were able to give accounts of what they thought the killer looked like. Problem is, couldn't really get a good description.
Moonlight, baby.
Yeah, one of them said that they thought he might have been African American. One said they thought he was white. The
40s, shocker.
Yeah.
in Texas.
I know, right? Exactly. So, didn't really help cops out much, but they did kind of agree that the suspect was probably around 6 feet tall and wore a like a pillowcase type sack with eye holes cut out, which I know for you specifically, Perez, is kind of a one of those things that spooks you. Those sack head killer things like the Strangers or
And
Somewhere between
Friday the
original,
13th.
yeah, the original Jason.
Also, somewhere between 5'7" and 6'8", height-wise.
Who said?
I just said that.
What's it? I don't know. What do
It's a joke because that's a very wide range of heights.
He was about 5'12".
I was watching, I want to say it was Good Mythical Morning, and Rhett was talking about how tall he was, and he said that he was 5'19".
That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't like the sacks.
Yeah.
Not a fan of the sex.
All guys.
Yeah, so then we jump forward to March 24th of 1946 with Richard L. Griffith, who was 29 years old, and Polly Ann Moore, who was 17. They were both found what appeared to be, it appeared that they had been sleeping in their car on the side of the road. When they were found, it turned out that they had both been shot. It looks like they had been probably shot outside of the vehicle and put into the vehicle, which was very strange. Yeah, so then at that point, a $500 reward was posted for any information on who this killer might be now that there had actually been murders committed. For people who don't know much about the Texarkana murders, they did eventually end up going on to make a movie that we'll talk about a little bit called The Town That Dreaded Sundown. And as I was doing my research into the murders, the movie does change some things about these murders, but keeps the basic beats intact. So as I was reading, I was like, this movie actually did a halfway decent job of kind of telling the story. April 13th, 1946, Betty Jo Booker was 15, and Paul Martin, who was 17. Paul picked Betty Jo up from I think it was a saxophone practice. They were then both found shot and dead by neighbors about a mile apart from each other. So this is when things really started to ramp up. The reward for finding the Texarkana killer was increased to about $1,700. So obviously people were starting to get really, really worked up about this. This is when they started bringing in Texas Rangers and people from the outside, and this turned into a much bigger actual manhunt than it had been before. It was after these murders that the Phantom Killer moniker was actually introduced to the public through newspaper, which is usually how these things happen. Usually it's the newspaper that, unless there's like a note from the killer or something, but typically it's these newspapers trying to be theatrical.
Jonah Jameson, man.
Is there any correlation to the fact that there was a movie that was released a few years before that called Phantom Killer? Do you know if there's any correlation between the naming of this specific killer and anything to do with that movie? Because I know nothing about that movie. I just know it exists.
Not as far as I could find, but I wouldn't be surprised. What I found in my research was that it was basically just they hadn't been able to find him. He seemed to be able to just disappear with zero trace.
But it is the 40s, so the technology is
Exactly, yeah.
vastly.
They were just trying to come up with a name and decided to call him the Phantom. And then when the person writing the article asked their editor, like, hey, is this cool? Can we go ahead and give him this name? The guy was like, well, nobody can catch him. So yeah, Phantom works. That's cool. So they ended up settling.
Cops are like, oh, look at all this. This must be the killer's blood. Gross. Clean it up.
Yeah. So then we kind of come to the end of this spree with what ended up being kind of the biggest event of the entire thing and ended up being the climax of the movie version, which was on May 3rd of 1946. Virgil Starks, a farmer who was 37 years old, was sitting in his living room at his farmhouse and with his wife in the kitchen and was shot twice in the back of the head through a window. His wife didn't know what was going on at first, so she walked out thinking that he had dropped some glass on the floor or had broken something. She discovers that he's been shot. She runs to go phone police, and she ends up getting shot a couple times in the face as well. So she was actually able to hear where the killer was coming from and escape the house through a different direction and run, I think it was like 50 yards down the road to a neighbor's house, and they were able to get her to the hospital. And she survived. She lost a bunch of teeth, and her jaw was shattered and all this stuff.
Shit, dude.
But she gave the neighbor who took her to the hospital, she gave him one of her gold crown teeth, like as payment for taking her to the hospital.
Wow. Her name was Katie, correct? Katie Starks?
Katie, yep. Katie Starks. So she ended up surviving the attack at the farmhouse. And at that point, they did try to send out like bloodhounds and things to try to track down the killer. But once it got to the highway, the trail disappeared and they weren't able to find anything past that. You know, again, with most of these things, nobody really had a clear idea of who the killer was. The main thing that had connected these incidents before was the caliber of bullet that was being used in the crimes. Originally, it was a 22 caliber, or it was a 32 caliber Colt pistol. The farmhouse attack was done with a 22 caliber pistol, but the general consensus was that they were probably done by the same person.
That's likely the reason why Katie survived as well, because a 22 caliber weapon is a lot less capable of killing. You have to make a very specific shot for it to end someone's life, essentially. It makes a smaller entry wound. Typically, it doesn't make an exit wound, so it usually requires a surgery to remove the slug. But other than that, it's not as likely to take down something as large as a human is.
Cool. Yeah, John, I've never been more scared of you in my life. At that point, the reward fund was increased to about $7,000. The big thing that I think went on to inspire a movie being made, and something that compounded on top of all of this, is that it made it really difficult for police to investigate this crime because of the amount of rumors that were spreading around town. By the time this had turned into this big manhunt, it became a huge Texarkana scare where people were shuttering up their windows, locking their doors at night.
Businesses had curfews. Bars
were closing early and refusing to sell alcohol because they didn't want to cause more trouble for the police. Stores were selling out of guns, ammo, blinds, all this stuff. So basically all of Texarkana was armed, which made the place a really scary place to be if you go and read interviews or listen to reports.
And some things haven't changed.
Yeah, because basically everybody was armed and on edge. So if you were walking around at night, even if you were a police officer, you had to have your lights on. You had to announce what you were doing, who you were, because people were getting accidentally shot left and right around town because people would see something weird. Like there's a report of people seeing some white-faced cattle that escaped from a farm nearby, and they see them running around in the night, and they think it's the white-faced... the white bag that the killer was wearing. And so they're calling, police are getting all these calls and everything, and they're not able to really focus in on who it is that they think this person is. The most evidence they had found was, they found a flashlight and they found some bloody footprints at the farmhouse.
Wasn't there somebody that they thought, like they had a suspect in custody at some point, didn't they?
Yeah, so basically what ended up happening was after Texarkana had started getting like really dangerous and crazy, some teenagers had started arming themselves and going out and sitting at lovers' lanes to try to lure out the killer, thinking that maybe they would be able to catch him themselves. And
trying to get that reward money.
Yeah, and the Texas Rangers had actually started employing teenagers and other rangers to actually go out and sit at lovers' lanes with like mannequins and stuff to try to draw the killer out. But he never fell for any of the bait. They eventually did end up having a couple different suspects that are still kind of stuck in people's minds as probably one of these two guys did it.
Yeah.
The first was a college student named H.B. Tennyson, who...
That's such a fucking 40s name.
Right?
For sure.
Yeah, so H.B. Tennyson was a college student who committed suicide, and in his suicide note, he admitted to the attacks. And there were some coincidences, like I guess he knew some of the people that were involved, like some of the victims. He went to either the same school or the same like band practices as the one girl that was murdered. So there were some kind of tenuous connections. They show a version of him in the movie. I think his name is Yule Swinney. Yule Swinney was a car thief, and some of the cars that he had stolen had been reported abandoned on the same nights where some of these murders had occurred. So he was eventually tracked down through his car thievery. They found his wife, and his wife immediately told the police that he had committed all the murders.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and gave them details that the police didn't release to the public. So there are some indications that like she knew something about the murders, like things that were hidden in the bushes and clues and things that the police hadn't released to the public.
So what ended up getting him off?
Well, so they basically
not his wife, huh?
Well, he never admitted. He never admitted to the murders. In the movie, they change it up a little bit, and the guy that gets caught for the car thievery does go like, "Oh well, you know, I'm the guy that did the murders too." But in real life, they both ended up serving some prison time just for the car theft, and didn't actually end up going to prison for the murders. Thing is, a lot of people would come forward and admit to the murders.
Yeah.
And it just made the whole thing extremely confusing.
That's such a fucking bizarre concept. Like, I understand that there's got to be a need for somebody with some type of a socio deficiency like that to need to be like, oh yeah, I was the one who brought these two towns to a fucking halt for months and months on end. I was that guy, you know, to feel that kind of power, just like, you know, pseudo, you know, instead of actually committing those types of crimes.
Yeah.
But that concept is just absolutely bonkers to me. Like, why would you want to admit to something that you didn't do.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, and there's been a kind of a speculation on like what the motive of the killer might have been. The general consensus from police and rangers at the time was that it was driven by what they called sex mania. So it was like a sexually motivated crime, even though it doesn't seem from the research I did that there's been a lot of confirmation of sexual assaults. There's one confirmed toward the beginning, but it's not like it really drove a lot of the events that happened. But that seems to be the general consensus, is that he's probably a guy who is not ex-military because his mental health would have been discovered, like his issues would have been discovered earlier on. So I think he's not ex-military, but proficient with guns.
So like a hunter or someone who spent a lot of time around them. I mean, obviously Texas, but
Yeah,
or someone who lives in Texas.
yeah. Well, and that's the thing that they don't know for sure either, is they know it's somebody who has a very strong knowledge of the Texarkana area, but they're not convinced, or they weren't at the time convinced that the killer was from Texarkana. But that was something that ended up scaring a lot of people, and ended up being a tagline for the Town That Dreaded Sundown, was the Texarkana murderer is still on the loose, like in Texarkana. And it scared a lot of people because, just like with the Zodiac, it's one of those situations where, yeah, a long time has passed now, so the idea that he is still around doing evil things, you know, is probably not super likely, but it still sends a shiver down your spine to know somebody like that didn't get apprehended. But a lot of people are pretty convinced that he did eventually get apprehended, just for a different crime, which is something they toy around in the movie.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of people are convinced that he probably got arrested for burglary or car theft or something
some type of a different murder in a different town, different county, different state.
Yeah, and is serving prison time, you know, unbeknownst to everybody else.
Or just straight up dead.
Yeah.
Well, I made the connection to Zodiac pretty quickly. I mean, I think it's pretty easy to do after you watch the movie. And so I did a little bit of research, and I'm not the only person that's had this thought. And I guess the timeline could match up, but it's not likely. If he was killing in Texarkana, he would have had to have been like 17 or 18
In order to have been Zodiac.
to be the Zodiac age that they got from the witnesses of Zodiac. So, but I guess at the same time, shortly after Texarkana, there were similar murders in Florida, kind of bridging that gap, and then similar murders with the Zodiac. All kind of have the same MO and the same style. And, I mean, more connections with Zodiac, both astronomy-based, right? Where you got the moonlight, because doesn't he only kill like every 3 weeks,
He
right?
would kill usually every 3 weeks on weekends at night. Yeah.
And then, you know, obviously the Zodiac stuff. So there's some connections, but I think it's all pretty loose.
That's pretty tentative at best.
Yeah.
I would say, I mean, obviously, and the Zodiac is at such a larger breadth as far as the amount of crimes committed and that sort of thing. I mean, there's a lot more there, and it's a lot more about the cryptics of it. You know, it's not as much of a like straightforward, okay, so I'm just going to go out, I have a specific MO, I'm going to follow through with that MO all the time. It's more about like, you're not going to fucking catch me, I'm too smart for you kind of shit. Which, based on that type of killing, even if their original assumption was that it was something pseudosexual, it could have been something that was grown into more of like a power type thing. But typically with serial killers, especially ones that go on long reigns of terror like that, it's definitely not something where you see that as a commonplace, where it's like, oh yeah, for sure. Like, you can see them going from doing something that's based in sex to something that's based in power. Like, typically the two don't go hand in hand. It's usually one or the other is the driving force.
Yeah, I think that it's not outside of the realm of possibility, but I do feel like they're killers that... And I mean, killers do change over time. Like, you do see that they'll start sometimes with one weapon and switch to a different one. They'll have a specific MO, and then that'll change over time. But in this case, like, to me, it seems like the Zodiac kind of has a different personality than this killer does.
I would agree with that.
The little that we know about both people, they sound like different men, which doesn't make this one any less scary. It doesn't have to be connected to something bigger. And I do think it's interesting that this is one of maybe the lesser known, like, high profile serial murder cases, but this is the highest profile murder case in like Texas history.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's one of those things where Texas, I think, it ends up being more known for the fictional Chainsaw Massacre than for the actual like serial murders that happened there. And this was something that I was not super familiar with, so I actually ended up going and watching the movie, The Town That Dreaded Sundown, before doing the research, so I could get, you know, so that I wouldn't be picking apart the movie for like historical inaccuracies or anything. So I just went in. It came out in '76. It's definitely not something that I would say rush out and watch.
I've heard it's very, very culty, very like it has its big flaws, but it also has its things that you can praise as well.
Yeah, I think the main problem with it is indecisive tone. Because the movie, when it's doing stuff that is based on the actual murders, it reminds me a lot of Zodiac in the way that it has the hooded figure come out and they basically restage these killings. They just change the names and some of the actual specifics of the murders. But the actual, like, step by step, you know, besides the dates being a little bit off, are basically the same as the story that I just told, you know, of the actual murders. So that's all that stuff is really interesting and pretty brutal. And it has a very almost like documentary, which is what the movie is kind of driven. It has a very interesting narration that goes throughout the whole thing, where it's a very deep voice, like Texas Chainsaw-esque narrator telling you the events as if it's a documentary, and that's how the whole thing goes. The problem is when it's doing the police procedural stuff, it does not go in the Zodiac route of making it very interesting and serious and dark. It turns it into a Western / like Dukes of Hazzard comedy, like
So
goofy, weird cops, like
and the
just
spark plug or whatever.
yeah.
I
There's
was
a cop called
what
Spark
the
Plug who's like
fuck?
always doing. He's like he's the Barney Fife, like doing the dumb
Dude,
like
so much. I was
Yeah.
like, what the fuck? Even Amanda was like, what is this?
Yeah.
It's like, dude, it's the weirdest horror movie you've ever seen.
It's very strange, and it wasn't until I actually read the history of what had actually happened that I respected the movie for being like a pretty faithful adaptation of the events.
Trying its best, yeah.
Yeah, it's just that the way they went about it wasn't compelling at all. By the end of it, like they changed some things, make it a little bit more like suspenseful and scary. What I think is actually more interesting of the movie is kind of the legacy that it's had. So
The director was from Texarkana, right?
oh, was he? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think he was a
I know
resident.
I know he was for sure. It was like a super indie director. It wasn't like super big, but that it was kind of the whole concept of it was kind of like a passion project and something that was kind of thrown together with everything they had.
Yeah, he lived in Texarkana in the late 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that. What ended up happening when the movie was released is that there was a lot of legal trouble around it because it was based so closely on actual events that happened in Texarkana. So, like, the town tried to file a lawsuit against the movie because of the tagline saying, like, that the killer was still on the loose and was still terrorizing people.
Basically saying, like, it's defamation. You know,
Yeah, and that you're going to scare our citizens with this movie.
Well, didn't some people believe that he ended up living out the rest of his life just as a citizen in the
That's
town?
100% possible.
And that's how the movie, spoiler alert, kind of ends, is he could be amongst you, like, you know, anywhere. Which is, I think, a good way to end a horror movie. I mean, it leaves that kind of that doubt in your mind, but obviously the townsfolk were like, we like don't want our people to be freaking out about this. Years later, like after it had kind of gone cold, one of the brothers of one of the actual victims tried to sue the movie because he felt like his sister, even though her name was changed, was misrepresented in the movie. So all that ended up happening, but since then it's become a tradition, I guess, in Texarkana. Since 2003, they show The Town That Dreaded Sundown as their last film of their like movies in the park in October of every year, and they've been doing that. And apparently
I
it
think
has
on Halloween, right?
Yeah, typically on Halloween, yeah. And they tend to do this. It's a tradition, and it tends to get a pretty big turnout. They were saying that they still do it on a VHS tape that they rent for like $200 a night.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible. I mean, that's something that I would like, even though from what it seems like the movie's not the best, it is something that would be just a fucking cool experience to just go out into Texarkana and watch a movie about just a fucking like almost ritualized slaying of young couples. That would be like a fucking super bizarre like situation to be in, and I'm all for it.
Well, it'd be like the ultimate like date night movie. Like, oh, I'm gonna take my girl to go see The Town That Dreaded Sundown in Texarkana at night, like outside
At sundown.
at sundown.
then-
Yeah,
And I
and
guarantee
then
there's
murder
some
in the movie.
yeah, I guarantee there are some fucked up people that show up with like pillowcase face masks and that sort of shit just to fuck with people, which now Anthony's out.
like like the stab movies in Scream.
So what's weird is that there is another movie
Yeah.
called Town That Dreaded Sundown.
I was gonna ask you about this. It's like a meta.
It's
sequel?
so that's what it is. It's a sequel. It's a reboot. It's so weird. So the movie takes place obviously in Texarkana, but the original Town That Dreaded Sundown exists in the movie. They're showing it at a drive-in that they do every year, so it brings in some of the real life stuff. It claims to be a true story, but obviously it's not.
Yeah.
And so it references the movie the whole time while playing out similar scenes with different people, obviously, that are very reminiscent. So it's like the first
Almost like a
one's-
copycat killer kind of thing.
Yeah. So
Like them using it as like
are
their film
they-
Bible.
some people are like, is it the same guy? How old would he be? He'd be in his 70s. There's all this weird stuff. There's no spark plug, but at one point, Anthony Anderson does call one of the cops like, hey, spark plug, come here.
No, nice.
Yeah, and I was like, hey, that's cool. So it's like,
I
the
enjoy me
first
an
one's
Anthony Anderson for sure.
not great. The second one's actually pretty good.
Yeah, that's what I was seeing from the reviews. Is the second one has like a 60-something%, which for a horror movie is pretty good, and the original has like a 40-something, if not lower.
Which is not bad for a movie from that territory.
Yeah, but I mean, I just didn't enjoy the movie. So if they do something more interesting, it sounds like it's very much like a Scream or a Human Centipede type,
but
like
also
meta
like,
sequel.
still a sequel.
Yeah,
it's so weird. Yeah, it was cool though. I enjoyed it a lot. I forget the guy's name. It was strange. I watched this movie and I looked up who the director was just to see, and then I was watching a different show that same night, and his name popped up on screen, and I was like, whoa! Wouldn't have recognized this guy's name except for an hour ago. I saw his movie, and that was that show Hunters. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
I have not.
Anyway,
It was Alfonso Gomez Rejon.
yeah. So it was. I mean, he did a good job, and I thought the movie was pretty interesting. Lots of Dutch stuff, but it works. It's like purposeful. It has a very American Horror Story feel, where it's like kind of stylized in that.
Produced by Ryan Murphy, the movie.
Yeah. Okay. So
And
that makes sense.
Jason Blum.
Yeah. So I mean, it feels like that too.
Yeah.
It feels
Like,
like a
I'm-
Ryan Murphy vehicle.
I'm 100% not intrigued to see the original, but like I'm like fucking stone set on seeing the
But
sequel.
That's the thing is
You
that
have to see both.
It relies so much on it that it wouldn't be as good if you didn't. But it's fun. It's very different, and it references the thing the whole time, and then it acts like the stuff that happened was real, and there's even stuff that they try in. Like if you would have told me this was a true story, the second one, I would have 100% believed you, because they choose the right things to do, and it's got is it Jim O'Hare? The
guy from American Horror Story?
Yeah.
I think it's Jim O'Hare.
He's in it. It's got the vampire dad from The Lost Boys.
Oh, it's Dennis O'Hare.
Dennis O'Hare, that's what it is. And so that was cool. Every time I see him now, I'm like, isn't that guy a vampire?
And Anthony Anderson plays Lone Wolf Morales.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's still a little cheesy, a little corny.
Yeah.
There's some boobs in it, which is cool.
Nice. Yeah, I'm excited to check that out. Once I found out what the bit of the second movie was, I was more interested in watching the first movie, knowing it was going to be prep, kind of. Like, the whole time I was watching it, and I was thinking, man, how did this movie make a sequel that sounds like it's made by people who really love that original movie, and this movie has become like a tradition, when really the movie is not that entertaining or that good, and especially when you put it in the wider realm of horror slasher type movies,
Right.
It's not really that like flashy or interesting. But I do think what's more interesting is just the fact that it is based in a true place, and that the people who are in that place kind of have ownership now over the story, and they kind of have this like special connection to this horrific thing. It reminds me a lot of like the kind of stuff that happens in like a Roswell type situation, where it's like they have this tourist trap for people who are into like horror or aliens or something, or sci-fi or whatever, based on these weird events. And so that's what I think is actually more interesting, and it makes me want to go to a place that I didn't even know existed to go to this annual showing of this movie, because I think that would be super fun. That sounds really cool.
So do we know if there were really any other films before this that would have been like a big like serial killer spree that came out that were based on true events that played it up as a horror film? Because, I mean, there's a good chance that before that there might not have been very many, which means that it is kind of a groundbreaking film in that regard, and that would definitely be a reason why a lot of people would have seen it and a lot of people would flock to it.
Yeah. I mean, that's good. I don't really know
I mean, I think
myself.
there's definitely movies that have used
The based on true
decade,
events,
right?
yeah.
You know what I mean? Even Texas.
Well, yeah, because I was going to
It's
say,
loosely
like,
based
I think
on-
that's where this movie is trying to go. And it feels that way in some points where it feels like it's trying to get to that point. And even reviewers were comparing it to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And that's probably mostly down to the fact that it takes place in Texas and that it has the based on a true story tag.
Mm-hmm.
This one just adheres a lot more to trying to be based on an actual true story than Texas Chainsaw ever did. But it loses out in the balance between historical accuracy and entertainment value that I feel like Texas Chainsaw obviously forgoes the facts for flashy, crazy, horrific stuff.
It's more of just like video facts than anything else.
Yeah, it felt like something you would watch on History Channel or whatever about the Texarkana murders, one of those true crime things that people would tune into on Netflix these days. Something that I did find interesting that I wanted to, like, my last note on this whole thing in the movie is, as an artist, I would be remiss if I didn't say that Ralph McQuarrie painted the poster for The Town That Dreaded Sundown. A lot of people will know him as the guy who went on to do like the artwork for Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like inspired the look of those movies. And this is one of his like early projects before he was a big known artist. And this is back when those hand painted posters were really big and really
like
popular.
In Vogue.
Yeah. In Vogue. Yeah. So really cool poster for not a super exciting movie. But yeah, like I said earlier, go research the actual facts. I think this is a really interesting case and not that much to it. So there's a lot of speculation that can go into what actually ended up happening.
And it's always scary when something's unsolved.
Yeah. I mean, this is an interesting case for our kind of light dabbling into true crime, just because up to this point, we've touched on no one who actually would truly be considered a serial killer up until this point, because Ed Gein, he didn't kill that many people. I mean, he is on record for only having killed 2 people, and he doesn't really have an MO. And then obviously the Dayton killers, they were just a spree killings.
Killers,
yeah, and I mean, there was more than one killer in that group as well, so it wasn't something where you could really pin it all on one person. But in this particular case, I mean, they had a strict schedule. They had very specific parameters as far as when they would kill and when they would run, and they were a little bit more aloof and smarter about their crimes, whereas Ed Gein was fucking making a mockery of the human body all over his house. And and the Dayton killers, they didn't last more than a week. They were just bored stupid kids who ended up going the way wrong direction with it. I mean, in this particular instance, this is closer to something more like Zodiac, that sort of thing, obviously, because we don't know if this person's ever been caught. They could have done the Henry thing, and they could have bounced from town to town and made sure that they kept the MO different, and that they weren't leaving things that were worse than fingerprints on crime scenes, bringing that same red and black flashlight to every single crime scene, that sort of a thing.
They have the handprint of this guy.
Yeah.
And the fingerprint. Like the government just released a bunch of stuff on these murders, which is wild.
Yeah, that they're still looking into it.
It's like 1,000 pages.
And it's like Ashley the intern
sent us a bunch of recently released documents.
Yeah,
and stuff.
for a 74-year-old crime. I mean, that's a fucking long time ago. That's more than a lifetime for a lot of people.
Well, and you got to think that this became the life's work of these kind of things become the life's work of a lot of these police officers and stuff, where it's like the people who investigated these things when they were happening probably spent the majority of the rest of their lives thinking about trying to find this person.
Oh, totally.
And you think about the victims, you think about the murderer, but this stuff affects an entire huge group of people for the rest of their lives. So I think that the legacy is definitely interesting, and I mean it's a mystery that who knows, we could have like a Golden State Killer situation where eventually some new DNA thing or something from the handprint or something they find on a piece of something could lead to finding this guy vegging out somewhere during the quarantine and being 100 years old.
But yeah, I want to put this on recording. I think that we should start referring to Ashley as Ashley the intern.
Oh.
Just to add her to our rogues gallery.
I actually really like that idea.
Because I mean, most of the time when we talk about anything true crime, she's always involved in some way. She'll send one or two of us little tidbits about stuff, because I mean that's like basically her hobby.
Have you run it past Ashley if she's okay being called an intern?
I don't think that she'll care, because she's not getting paid. Not like we are either, but
when he says friend of the podcast, Ashley,
just be like Ashley the intern.
Yeah, don't even try to make it sound good. Just do your voice from later.
Yeah, so that is going to wrap it up for our discussion on a thing that goes by many names, but we'll end it on the Texarkana murders. So if you have any other interest in that case, I would definitely suggest to scour the internet. There is a lot of things. Like I said, there was just a large document released by the FBI that digs into the case a lot further and that releases a lot of data that most people were not aware of. If you're interested, check it out. It's out there. For us, we're going to go ahead and hop into our recommendations for the week.
Patrick, what is it? Where are you going?
I've got to return some videotape.
So, obviously, we watched those 2 movies. I would recommend the second one a lot if you're into that kind of weird sequel, remake, reboot type thing. And I would only recommend the first one, really, if you're a horror fan and you want to see both, like be a completionist. And really to get the second one, because you can't really understand the second one without seeing the first one. So I would recommend those, I guess.
Really cool title for a horror movie that doesn't really go anywhere. But yeah.
And then my other recommendation, not really in the realm too much, but that show Hunters that I mentioned earlier is super good. It's on Amazon, and it's about Nazi hunters in the 70s, and it's got Al Pacino and Logan Lerman in it. And it's,
this is that. Yeah, okay, the Al Pacino thing. I know what you're talking about.
it's good. It's super weird, and sometimes they'll do like weird sitcom stuff out in the middle of nowhere. What the fuck just happened? And but it's brutal, and it's really good.
Sounds cool. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a relevancy sandwich. So I'm going to give you something that's relevant, something that's not, and something that's relevant again. So as far as the first relevant thing, I would say that speaking of completionists, the completionist on YouTube just dropped his basically his video review of the process of completing the Resident Evil 3 remake, which was a very interesting watch because there's a lot that's been going into that as far as the discussions around it, how short or how long it should have been, things that should have been left in, things that should have been left out, that sort of stuff. Very interesting. I would definitely suggest to check it out. As far as the non-relevant thing, I've been playing a lot of Spyro the Dragon, the Reignited trilogy. I know Anthony has been doing the same.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it, considering you're almost about to beat the first one. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Definitely a blast from the past as far as jumping back into my childhood. I've been having a great time with it. And then to complete the sandwich and get us back into something relevant, I have been on a little bit of a Coheed and Cambria kick recently. So they are very well known for a few very massive songs, but a lot of people don't know that basically their entire discography is one long rock opera. Basically talking about this like pseudo-religious, like steampunky war that's taking place that has like all these different moving parts and characters. It is very fucking difficult to keep up with it, but the music is great.
Yeah, I think there's only one record that they've come out with that's
Not in the whole Neverender, like
the Amory Wars.
Yeah. They also have comics and stuff that go along with it. Claudio Sanchez is just fucking like crazy with all of the things that he puts his fingers in, as far as like he's got it. Come on, guys! Oh, I love that I get to edit this out. With all of the different irons that he has in the fire, it's definitely. With all the different things that he's doing, I mean, he's got the comics, he's got 2 different bands essentially that he's juggling, and then on top of that, he's also, I think they've worked on some kind of like an animated series potentially to go around the events that take place in the music. I don't think that ever came to fruition at any point, but I mean that might still be something to look out for. It'd definitely be interesting.
Well, I'm definitely gonna not check that out because I don't have ears. My
my wife,
my watch list. Speaking of things that are like documentaries, comprises of 4 documentaries. The first that I definitely want to drive home as, please watch this if you like horror movies.
Can I just pause you for a second and say that was the fucking loosest segue I've ever heard?
I didn't say that I was like the segue master. It's just need to get from one place to the other. So the first documentary is one that I've actually been kind of tracking because it involves some YouTube people. And it finally came out, and I checked it out. It's called In Search of Darkness, and it is about 80s horror films. And it's like 4 hours long. So it's one of those really epic, kind of like they did with the Never Sleep Again and the Crystal Lake Memories documentaries, where they really go. So if you're looking for something that you're just going to get absorbed into for an entire night, this is the thing for you. And that's what I did last night. And I broke it up into 2 pieces. So I watched the first 2 hours, took a break and went and worked on some stuff, came back and watched the last 2 hours. And they go year to year, 1981. And they go through a bunch of the movies and have the creators. They have James A. Janice from the Dead Meat YouTube channel is heavily involved in all the stuff. And they go through like a history behind the scenes of like every 80s, even ones I'd never heard of before. So that's super cool. Definitely check that out. The second documentary that I want to talk about is called Smoke and Mirrors. It's a Tom Savini documentary that I was super into. I love Tom Savini. Anybody who has seen a really gory horror movie probably knows who he is.
And needs to thank him like vehemently.
Yeah. So he goes into his whole backstory and how he learned how to do what he does.
Is that the one on Shudder?
I believe it's on Shudder, yeah. Yeah, it is, yeah. And he is just a super fun guy. It's just really cool to hear him talk. And
He's a real mushroom.
Yeah. And then the other night, I stumbled on a documentary called Scream Queen. Don't know if you guys have heard about this.
Seen this? Heard about
this?
No.
This is a documentary from Mark Patton, who played the main character in A Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
The
documentary is
The main
about...
dude?
Yeah. And the documentary is all about A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, but specifically about his experience with it being a very, very homosexual movie, and him being, at the time, a closeted homosexual actor who was basically forced to come out to the public through the release of this movie, and it kind of destroyed his career, and he ended up disappearing off the face of the planet, like moved to Mexico, and was not found until that Never Sleep Again documentary was looking to interview him, and they found him in Mexico, and he didn't even know that he had become like an icon for young gay men who were horror fans. And he ended up coming back and now is this huge activist for gay actors and characters in horror movies. And
that's fucking tight.
A really good documentary.
Kind of shit that'll make you cry a little bit.
Yeah, it's very, very, it was very impactful. I liked it a lot. And then the last one I want to recommend, I think you might have watched this, Anthony, but it's called Memory. It's about the making of Alien. And that just came out, I think, last year. It was great. I mean, I know the majority of what there is to know about Alien at this point, but it's always great to hear like how heavily influenced that movie was by artists like Giger. Right. And so it starts from the very inception of the idea when it was called like Star Beast and goes all the way through getting
I kind of have to have like I want like a poster that is just like the Alien poster but says Star Beast instead. I kind of have to have
that would be
now.
Awesome. So yeah, it's like from Star Beast to Dan O'Bannon to Giger to Ridley Scott, the whole 9 yards. And that is the last documentary I have to recommend. So yeah, that's all I got for this week.
So we have been trying to up our social media presence game, and we've been receiving a lot of feedback, and a lot of people have been answering our questions, and it's been a lot more of an active engagement in the content that we're releasing, which is something that we really appreciate. So we wanted to shout out a couple of our new followers. So go ahead and take it away, Anthony.
Yeah, so I'm going to try not to miss anybody. I've been trying to compile a list of people who have followed us recently. And starting from the bottom, we have at The Hyperspace, we have at _ J02, at _ Lena Freitas, at Wait For It Podcast, and at Rob Munier. I know I'm probably butchering half of those, so we'll go ahead and throw those handles in the show notes as well for anybody who wants to follow them. That ranges from creatives to other podcasts to people who are doing completely different things. So go check out those pages. We've been trying to go through and check out your guys' pages and see what you've been up to during the whole quarantine and everything. I've been getting some inspiration and just trying to post more stuff to get you guys involved. So I'll pick out the next 5 people next week and maybe try to do a little bit more research into what you guys are doing so we can give you more of a comprehensive shout out in the future. But that's all we got for this week. Thanks again for your support.
Awesome. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for this episode. For next week, we are going to be jumping into the Alex Garland vehicle Devs, which should be an interesting watch. I know that Silva's already watched some of it. I haven't watched any of it. I think you've seen like an episode, maybe?
2, yeah.
2? Yeah, so I'm going to be jumping into this completely blind, but it might be better in this instance to just jump in and try to watch all of it kind of almost in one sitting to see how it plays out as like an overall story rather than something you have to wait week to week for.
And that's on Hulu for anyone who wants to check it out. And that's a sci-fi vehicle. Anybody who's seen like Annihilation or Ex Machina by Alex Garland will know what to expect, I think.
Definitely, yeah.
All right, so that is going to be it for this week. We hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. We had a blast giving you some true crime stuff. It's been a while. And we will see you next week with Devs. Thank you, as always, so much for listening. I've been Anthony.
I've been John.
And I've also been Anthony, internet darling.
See you guys next week.
Keep it creepy.
You can find Porcelain Peak on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Store, Spotify, TuneIn, and Stitcher. Wherever you listen, don't forget to rate, review, share, and subscribe so you never miss a spine-tingling episode. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and at porcelainpeak.com for additional content. Special thanks to Randy Greer for composing the Porcelain Peak intro music and to Anthony Silva for designing the Porcelain Peak logo. All episodes and additional content is hosted, written, produced, designed, and edited by the Porcelain Peak team, consisting of Anthony Perez, John Brasher, and Anthony Silva.
This
has been here words for a Weirdos production.
Bills, something with some bills. I don't think you do. Fun you can do.
Those are nice pants. Where'd you get those?